we're going to do some hippos. I'm not just showing you some random hippo pictures. Yeah, this is going to be our tutorial for this month for the $10 tier, and I'm really quite excited about it and a little nervous because I've not done skin textures like this. Fur, feathers, lots of that, not really done a lot of skin, so we'll be learning along on this together. I mean, I have some fairly good ideas, but I'm going to be discovering stuff as I go along, so you're coming along for the ride with that one. It's quite a long, skinny piece that I've done. I sort of cropped it down because I really wanted to bring the faces to the front, get that feeling of being low and looking directly at them. But they're really very strange creatures when you look at them, aren't they? I mean, I don't know, they crack me up. I think they're just strange, they're bizarre. They're kind of cute too though, in an ugly way. So I'm going to try and work across with them. So I'll start with this hippo on this side. Colour-wise, it's a lot of grey, right? There's a lot of grey and pink. Grey and pink, that's pretty much it. And we've got both cool grey and warm greys. I'm going to zoom in on our first one over here. I don't know whether, it's a cow and a bull, or I have no idea what sexes these are, but I'm going to call her and him, just so that we're on the same page there. Some things to really be noticing here. So we always, when we're using the hot press paper, we always start with the lightest colour first, so that there's a base layer of the lightest colour that allows us to pull back into it if we need to. But also with hot press paper, with smooth paper, you want to build from light to dark. You can't get the lights over the top of the dark, so we always need to keep that in mind. With this sweet face here, some of the highlights that I see here are very blue, and the temperature of the skin here is really blue. I mean, it's grey, but there's got that blue sheen to it, okay? However, down this way, it's not. It's very brown. So that's the warm greys. The warm greys tend towards a brown colour. The cool greys tend towards a blue. So we want to use some warm greys here. We want to use cool greys up here. But the lightest colour that I see over on this side is actually pinks. Can you see? So what I'm thinking we will do is I've got some colours to talk to you about in a minute, but we'll use some warm grey as a base through the front of the nose here, or down near the lips really, and this side of the face, and then we're going to come over that again with pink on the side of the face here, and perhaps a little bit up into the nose here, and then we're going to go with cool colours, so cool grey one or cold grey one as a base all over the face on this side, except for here, and again that's a warmer colour. So we've got a very blue highlight here, but here the lighter colours are more of the brown sort of persuasion, so that warmer grey. So it's a real interesting combination of the colours here. We're not going to try and get all these little white bits in when we're actually drawing with pencil. We'll come back in with the slice tool for that. So you can use a slice tool, you can use a really sharp, hard eraser. You can use a Stanley knife or an X-Acto knife too, but I'm a bit wary of those in cutting the paper. The slice tool is good because it's the ceramic blade, so it's softer on the paper. We're going to use the embossing tool to get some of these hairs in. I'm not obviously going to do all the sand on the face here. We'll just smooth the colour up. But we do have the sand underneath here, so that, again, that's that warm grey colouring, warm grey 1, really, with a few specks of a darker warm grey in there. We've got some more of those really obvious hairs here, so we'll do the warm grey undertone first, and then come in with the embossing tool to get some of those hairs in. We've got dark shadows of the hairs, which we would do at the very last on this side here. So the same with the skin on this side. We're going to do the warm grey one and then a pink, a beige red probably. I've got cinnamon and Venetian red too, so they're at the sort of darker end. This is really bright pink though. I haven't got anything out for that. I might need to get something out for that and that. That's like fuchsia pink. It's really bright. We'll do some of the darker, we'll give an indication of some of the darker lines here, and we'll also use a slice tool again. We'll use some dark sepia around these sort of eye bits there. I don't know if you can see, but you can actually see a bit of the eye itself in here too. The size that we're doing, we probably won't be able to really see that, but it's just interesting to note. There's a little bit of brown in the ear too, so I'll like our standard colours, I'll keep the Bista and Nougat and those sorts of colours out as well. I'm trying to determine if there's actually a bit of purple in here. That sort of mix between the blue and the pink. We might have to think about that a bit more. So this side, we're going to say that this is the male. A lot darker to look at. There's a lot less pink that we can see from this angle anyway, in the skin. There's still warm greys down the bottom here, but it's a much darker warm grey. We'll use exactly the same process again with the embossing tool. And they're definitely like a warmer colour whisker, so we want to have a warm base under here. And then we're going very cool again. We've got these sort of spotty colours here, which we'll do with indigo. I hope my hair hasn't been in the way there, I just realised. And there's pink again underneath these eyes here, but it's nowhere near as vibrant as this one. So we use more like the sort of caput mortuum flavours. You can see the eye in this one more. So I'm seeing the indigo and something dark like walnut brown, probably like a reddy brown. Yeah, so I mean, what we're going to do is much the same size as this. You'll see my paper underneath. Well, that's what I'm doing, the size that I'm doing anyway. So, you know, you don't see a lot of those details until you really zoom in. So we don't need to stress out too much about the skin textures, like the creases all in the skin. We'll just do that in certain areas, particularly around the cheeks here. You can sort of see that. But yeah, it's a really interesting piece. I'm really looking forward to doing it. We're just going to take it slow. We'll work our way across. I'm going to work my way across, let's put it that way, from left to right because I'm right-handed. But we'll essentially finish one creature at a time. So if you're wanting to work the other way, then move on to the previous videos and work from that way across if you're left-handed or prefer to work that way. Alright, I reckon we dive in. Alrighty, so these are the colours that I've pulled out for now. We might need to add to them. We'll just see. So I've got a bunch of pinks, beige red, cinnamon and Venetian red. Then the two caput mortuums, both the plain and the violet. I've pulled burnt sienna out. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to use it, but I feel like around the ears perhaps it's something that might be useful. Sky blue to really bring the blue out in the blue-grey areas. And a bit of Bista, which again I was thinking more towards the ears as well. So I'm just not really sure until I get some colour down whether those are going to be the exact ones that I use as far as the browns go. But the pinks definitely. I've got my Fabriano Artistico and I'm actually working on a piece that is 29.5 by nearly 15.5 centimetres or 11 3/4 by 6 inches. So you can see it's quite a panoramic sort of look. And I really wanted to get that feeling that you're sitting right down and looking into their faces on the same level, which would be awfully scary if you did that. Apparently they're one of the most dangerous animals in the world. Just very interesting. Okay, I've got my tracing paper to rest my hand on, and I'm going to start with this gal over here. Let's get my reference all sorted out. And I used a colour eraser to do the outline with, and I did it a bit darker than I would normally do it if I was doing it for myself, but it shows up on camera that way. And I've got my kneadable eraser. I've got my slice tool, couldn't think of the name of it. My embossing tool. It's a strange noise, I'm just trying to figure out what it is. Oh, it's the backup on my computer. And my brush, to get rid of bits of floof, and my Mono Zero, my nice fine eraser, which you could use instead of a slice tool if you get a nice hard edge to get some colours out if you don't have a slice tool. And of course my sharpeners. So I'm going to start with cold grey 1. And I have decided to tape around this piece because I'm going to be doing colour all the way to the very edge on all of the edges. So usually you'll see me use like the T sort of strip method, where I attach the paper by putting the masking tape to the back. So for this one I'm going to use this particular method and then remove the tape, and then we'll get like a white border. Just be super careful removing the tape because it can damage your paper. So take it slow. If you're finding that it's really tacky after particularly if you've left it for a while, if you're going to work on this over a few days, you might want to hit it with a hairdryer or something first to sort of warm the glue up. The other thing with using tape this way is that you technically want to make sure you use something that's archival, a tape that's archival, because the acids in tape can damage the paper over time. So if this was a piece that I was, wanting to submit to a competition, or, a nice fine art piece that I was wanting to sell afterwards, I wouldn't use the tape that I've used here. I would use something like this, which is archival, it's acid free, but I also find it incredibly distracting because it's such a bright blue. I feel like it changes the way I see colour. So that's why I use an archival masking tape instead, and I use the T sort of adhesion, having the masking tape at the back and then adhering it on that way usually. This is just going to provide a nice crisp line, and I'm not. This tape is not archival. I'm not too worried about that though. Okay, I want to start with the eyes because I like to start with the eyes. So I'm going to put a base layer. I'm going to start on this eye first. A base layer of the cold grey down. Actually what I want to do first is get the dark sepia and sort of get the shape of the eye in here a little bit. So, excuse my bloody tracing paper. It's really humid here today and everything's curling up again. Right, yeah, so same process as we usually do for eyes. I'm going to lift up some of the colour eraser that I've got down there. Which will make it a bit harder for you to see, but okay. And I've got my basic lines, but these are just a guide. I really want to study my... Oh, I've got warm grey instead of dark sepia. There we go. I want to really study my reference picture. And you really can't see at this size that little iris is poking out at all. So I'm just going to thicken that up a little bit. If you do it a bit larger, you'll be able to see it for sure. And kind of like, I don't know if it's a scar or just the lid, like the creasing. I'm just working really lightly until I get everything exactly the way that I want it. It's quite a dark shadow under there. Okay, I think that's all of the darker lines that I want to put down for now. Really, it's very interesting. So I'm gonna work with a light layer of coal grey one first. I'm using sort of circular motions. There is a bit of yellowy colour up there. I was debating before whether to keep brown ochre out. I kind of felt like I saw it in some places, and maybe we'll still use that, we'll see. This is that really light highlight area here, but we'll just work on this one eye area first. Okay, we've got a really nice shadow area here, so we need to make sure that we bring that in, because then that helps with the highlights over the top of the eye. Alright, I'm going to start with I'm going to start with the lightest pink, so I'm going to go with beige red first, and build a layer of that over the top, because I also want to see how they react together. And this is such a light pink, and there is blue in the coal grey, so I'm wondering if it will go a little purpley, but it doesn't seem to be. So I'm just doing the same thing, a light layer, working sort of circular motion. And I'm aware of the roundness of the form. I'm going to keep this area blue. Yeah. Okay, let's get a, I'll start with cinnamon and see how we go. Let's start bringing in some of the darker reddy colours and giving the lid a bit of volume. And I may want to go over these with a grey as well, but see that on the top of the lid here is sort of a darkened area. It's a bit shadowy, and then down, and I'm keeping in mind the form because there are things are rounded here, so I'm going to use rounded strokes. I'm going sort of this way, looking at the roundness of the form. And then that same sort of colouring is down under the eye here. Again, considering the roundness of the form. And that there is some highlights, like some lighter colouring. So I want to leave these light areas here. This comes around, and then this part comes around this way. So again, I want to make sure I leave the lighter areas. And I may need to adjust all this. This may end up being the lighter colour, I'm not sure yet. And I want to pay close attention to the form. So the lid comes up here. And then there's sort of a golden colour up in here, which I might use brown ochre for after all. This part here is a lot darker yet, but we're going to add this as the sort of, as another base layer underneath there. Just going back around, checking on things. I need to extend that so that I can get that form in properly there. So I've got my cold grey one again. I'm just extending this down a bit. Because this line that I've got here is actually a shadow line, so let's just pull that up a little bit. Okay, so I'm always looking at shapes. I try not to get overwhelmed by the fact that there's a lot of anatomy here that I don't understand, and just look at it from the perspective of shape and follow that as a lead, and learn about anatomy and the way that the form is from that. Okay. So I think I am going to add a little bit of brown ochre, just a little touch. Up here. I'll give it that sort of orangey colouring. Oh, it's raining. It's really raining. Let's add it to our colour list. sound, isn't it? Okay. A strange little eye is appearing. Things need to be darkened up a lot more yet, obviously, but that's a good start, I think. Alright, I want to go over some of the shadowy areas there. And I'm just trying to determine what I'm going to go over them with. Because I want to really keep those sort of really quite pinky bits there. I think I'm going to go with a warm grey. Because down here is much warmer too. I think we'll do that. I'm going to try 3 first, but I suspect I'm going to need 4. So let's try 3 first and see what happens. And what I'm looking at is the shadowy area under the eye here. Just working lightly. We might want to go backwards and forwards with the colour a little bit just to make sure that we get the right colouring there. How does that look? I think that we do want to pump the pink up a little bit. I'm going to get some Venetian red and work lightly with that over the top of the cinnamon in the darkest areas of the cinnamon. Babies out there of some description, galahs or corellas. Just darkening up what we did before a little bit, like the next level of pink, pinky red. And when you start with a lighter colour, you can always build up on it, so that's a worthwhile thing to do too. Let's get that light pink again, that beige, and go over the lighter areas again. I think I'm going to take some white, and I'm not quite at burnishing stage, but I'm going to lighten that pink again just a little bit in those really light areas. It sort of brings those colours together that we've got, the layers. So yeah, I'm going to go to warm grey 4. And I'm just lightly applying that over the top to the really sort of shadowy areas. Working lightly. This line's a little dark. The birds are being a bit noisy, I'm sorry. Can't do much about that. Now, around that eye a bit there, I put the dark sepia down, but I want to soften that up a little bit. So I'm going to take some walnut brown, my tiny, tiny walnut brown. And I may even bring some of that into that shadowy sort of areas that we've got going there. And we can use this really lightly to start to put in some of these like crease lines. I think that you can see it's starting to come together a little bit. There's lots of nice light layers. constantly looking at the way that the form is, sort of roundedness. We've got a round pouch sort of here. We've got another rounded area this way. There is the lower lid sort of comes down this way, and there's a highlight in here, and then it's quite blue in here as this lid comes down this way. I'm going to go back to some cinnamon again and pull that together. What a funny little thing that is. So can you see how that it's just a process of building up layers, and I'm working softly and slowly. And as each sort of layer comes down, I can start to determine what might be required of the next part. You can see the colours working together. I'm going back to some Venetian. It's really dirty, isn't it? I'm thinking I might look for a nice bright pink, the same one as I sort of said I could see in the nose here. And a light glaze of that over the top of this might be nice. The brown ochre again. I'm going to take a bit of Caput Mortem, not the violet, just the plain, which is a more pink sort of colour, and lightly come over this side here, and a bit more over this shadow area. Just deepening that shadow a little more. Alright, some cold grey one. And I'm going to go over that again where this really light part is, which you might want to come back into a little bit. And then I want a darker cold grey, so I think I'm going to go with, what have I got here? 5. I just need to sharpen that up a bit. And I'm looking at some of the sort of craggy lines that are around the eye here. Just lightly adding those in. Nice sharp pencil. So this is going to lead out to these darker greys that are outside the pink here, which will also start to give this a bit of context as well. Let's really hone in on this highlight that we've got here. Just looking at the shape of that. So at this point I'm only working over where I've got the lighter cold grey base colour underneath. I should actually go and have a look at what they're doing. They may well be showering the birds outside. When it's been really hot, it was quite hot yesterday. It was 30, 33 I think it was yesterday, and today's 24, so a huge difference. But they get all dry and dusty as well, and when it rains, they hang upside down in the trees, act like lunatics, and have a shower. That's what they do. And it may well be what they're doing now, because there's a lot of carrying on out there, given that it's raining. When it's been raining for a while, they'll sit around quite sombre and sad looking, their little drenched feathers. So the fact that there's a lot of noise out there may well be that they're showering. How are we feeling about the eye? It's missing something, I'm not entirely sure what. There's a lot of grey. I just feel like maybe I need to pump up the pinks a little bit. I do want to find a brighter pink, don't I? I think I call coral. I wonder if I can find that one quickly. Is that it? Yeah, it's quite a bright pink. Oh, it's really raining out there. I may actually need something a little brighter than that. There's a little bit of scrap paper on the side that I work on, so it's pink carmine, I might need that. But I've got this coral, which I might just give a light going over there. That's nice. That's really pumped up the pink. Leave those areas that are definitely not as pink though. Yeah, that's better. So let's add that to our arsenal. Some of these numbers are really hard to see. 1, 3, 1. I think it's starting to look much more like an eye now, isn't it? Just keep building, building up, building up. I'm going to take coal grey 3. I'll add a little bit more depth to this shadow here yet. I think I may add a little nougat. I feel like we're getting some nice form happening now. I can see a lot of the folds. It's a funny little face to draw. I'm going to try a little bit of Bister, I think. Bister or nougat? Okay, I'm actually going to try some Van Dyke Brown. That's something altogether different. And lightly go over the greys that I've put down. Yeah, that's good. That's better. That's more of the shadow colour that I wanted. So grey and then Van Dyke Brown. So the Van Dyke Brown is a real reddy brown, but in a different way to walnut. It's working beautifully with that grey. Righto, adding walnut. Walnut, adding Van Dyke, 176. Yeah, I'm feeling much happier about that. Alright, I'm going to get some of the grey around the outside so that we've got some better context then. So I've got my cold grey one here somewhere, here. And I'm going to come all the way up. I'm just going to actually lighten some of these lines here. Not obliterating, just lightening. So cold grey one. Just focusing on around the eye at the moment. Okay, got dark indigo, and I'm going to put a light layer of it underneath the greys that I'm going to be using here in these areas that I can see that are really dark blue-grey. So coming down the other side of this eye anatomy, eye feature, around the back of it. Again, we're going to sort of purpley coloured territory up here, so I'm going to add the pink over the top of that before we add the grey. Okay, and there's not really blue down here. It's more all up in there. I'm going to take some sky blue. I'll go around the lightest part here. And then there's quite light parts in here. It's really bluing all of this up. And then I just want to bring it back together again with the cold grey. In light layers. Righto, let's get, oops, I'm going to go with Venetia, I think, and lightly go over blue area on this side. Ooh, that's looking nice. And there's a bit of pink in here. So I'm really doing like a wash of this Venetian over the top of the blue that we've got down. There's a really light patch of blue in here. Come back and really make sure that that's in there. I do love the sound of rain. A little pink and blue creature at the moment. So I've got Van Dyke again. And I'm going to come over that darkened area here. So you can see how light I'm working. You can really see the paper texture still. I just want to get some base layers down, start to feel the way around colouring. Just darkening up the eye a little bit. The more you add, the more colouring you add, the more dark areas you see you need. Right, let's bring some greys in. I had all my pencils all nicely sorted out and now I've got them all in a mess again. I'm going to go with cool greys first. Just try and determine if I want to go 3 or 4. Well, let's try 3 first and see how we go. So we're coming down here. Over the top of the browns and pinks. Starting to pull them all together. We can always bump up those pinks again. Now I'm not I'm not pressing any harder, but I am working in smaller circles and going over the area a couple of times to really start to pull those colours together and get rid of some of that paper texture. always remember too that the exact colours you use don't matter as much as making sure you get the tones of, the values correct. You want to make sure you get the darks in the right places and the lights in the right places. And that's what helps make something look realistic. It's not having the exact colours. What do you think? Look at that. That's suddenly a hippo eye appears. Magic, I tell you. A bit of work left to do, not yet, but it's getting there. Alright. Oops. Let's start to define some of those areas a bit more again. I'm going to go with warm grey 4, is that what I've got here? I've got actually warm grey 5. And I'm looking at the shadowy area, and it bumps up over the top of this ridge here and comes down this way. Then I'm going to have to find a pencil extender because that's not very comfortable. So I'm just darkening this up a little bit. I'm working really lightly. And I'm using a warm grey over the top of a cool grey, which is over the top of browns and pinks. So just building layers. And I actually want to put brown over the top of it again, I think. But at the moment I just want to darken up. What do you think? This highlight's way too light, but we'll work on that as we come down here. So I'm really constantly looking at my reference. Okay, what I think we might do is actually do this eye now, and then we can finish up off the top here and start to work our way down this way. I kind of want to have both eyes working together, so that's my thinking. This curl here. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to lighten up these lines that I've got here around the eye again. So you can still see them, but I want them to be much lighter. Probably lighten these ones too, because I'm going to do that in a while anyway, so. It's very dark out. Perfect for playing with pencils. Right, cold grey one, where are you? Right here. No, not cold grey one, I want dark sepia, don't I? And I just want to define this eye here a little bit. It really comes out over lid. Okay, and I'm really lightly using the dark sepia to do a bit of this shadow work that's in here. I don't want it to be too dark, because it's not really this colour that is the darkness. It's a darker pinky sort of colour. But this is fine as a base, and just to make sure that I've got those shadowy areas in. I'm just looking at the top of the eye. Here is where this ear starts, behind. So we get that in. I think that the rest will be okay. I might get some indigo and just define the top of the eye ridge there a little. Yeah, I think that's okay. Alright, and I've got my cold grey one. I'm going to do that same thing. I'm just going to create a base layer all over this area here. Working in circles, I can actually come down over here. Not pressing hard, just working in circles. come in with some pink. I will do a base of the beige red, the really light pink first. No, I won't. I'm such a fibber. I'm going to do Venetian red. Venetian red first for the darker areas, and I can be a bit loose with it because it's going to be multiple layers, and I know now how I want to build it up given what I did on this side. So I'm just getting some of the darker pinky areas in. And I'm going to want to come back and add more. But I'm going to come over it. Oops, I'm going to get that little ridge of the eyelid in there. I'm going to come over it with the beige red now. And I'm coming down to all the areas that I can see that are pinky coloured. And I'm going to do the same over here when we get back to over there. Okay. So I've got Venetian red again. Just going to define a little bit more of the darker areas, making sure that I am equally aware of the roundness of the form. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of the Van Dyke and go over the dark areas. Working really lightly. Right, I'm looking at some of the areas that are really light. I'm going to grab white again and just really highlight those areas. So there's a bit there inside the eye here. Obviously we've got this really light area here. Build the colour up around it. Bit there, there's a little bit above. Down in this corner here. I'm just going to do exactly the same process, just really build the colouring up and around. You can see that I moved much faster on this one because I have a better idea of how these colours all work together. That's just the way that the process is, man. It's just part and parcel of learning. Got some indigo here. I'm going to bring a bit of that blue in. Over the top of this nose ridge too. Really light in here. Just always looking at how different areas relate to each other. Although you're working on a small section at a time, you know, you do need to pull back and look at the larger picture sometimes too. Just to make sure that you're on the right track for the composition as a whole. Okay, I'm going to take sky blue and do what we did on the other side and just sort of go around the really lightest parts, around the edge of them. Back to coal grey one again. Just lightly starting to push that colour in a bit. Right. Let's work on a bit more detail around this eye. So I'm going to take cinnamon And look at those sort of mid-tony pinky areas. Keeping an eye on the anatomy all the time, so looking at the rounded forms. And working my pencil lines to match that roundedness. So you can see in this area here it's quite brown and there's a bit of purpley sort of colouring happening here. So I want to get some cold greys in here. I want to pump up the brown in here a bit, so I want to get some more of the Van Dyke in. And in here I also want to put a bit more Venetian red. Here is a little purplier, so again we want to use some more of the cold greys in combination. Here's quite purpley too. So I'm going to take cold grey, oh I don't know, 2 or 3, we'll do 3 maybe. I'm going to do 3. And come over some of this area here. Oh, that's my jaw. You can see that we need to pump up the pink a bit too. Some of those areas. Actually, I want to go a bit darker, I think. I'm going to go cold grey 4. Looking at the form, and I'm going to bring some brown in there as well. Looking at the way that the skin moves over the bony structures. Some nice sort of line work happening in here too, which we'll work on a bit more yet. in there. We've got some lighter areas up here. And you can see that they're not as light as this area, so I'm adding this sort of mid-tone grey, which you can see is getting rid of some of the areas that I've initially put in as dark, but they're nowhere near dark enough. Let's take indigo again, because it is really blue. Just another light layer over the top of this, which also defines that area a bit more again. Put some nice shine on the top of that nose too. A bit more blue this way. And I'm going to bring a really light smattering of the blue into these purpley areas here that I talked about before. And then I can use the cold grey on top of them to really bring them out. Can you hear that noise? That baby bird call? That's a peewee. And the peewees have had 2 fledglings and they're both male, which is really unusual. There's usually one of each sex. And the father, the male peewee, the adult, has a very sore leg. I don't know what he's done to it. He's been sort of hopping around on it for the last a month or more at least, if not more. And not really able to put much pressure on it, but lately he seems to be putting a bit more on it, so I don't know whether it's an injury that's healing or he's just getting used to it. I'm not sure, but he seems to be doing most of the on the ground care with these 2 very hungry fledglings that are constantly harassing him for food. And the female seems to come and go, but I think that she probably does more of the in the tree feeding. But they make not the prettiest of noises, and it goes all day. Okay, I think we're getting there. Some Van Dyke again. Just lightly building up these layers all the time. No pressure on the wrist, no pressure on the paper. But we're getting the depth of colour that we want. So I'm just going to go over the eye itself, the eye structure, with Van Dyke as well. And I'm just looking at all of the lines and the crags and how the shadows work in and around those. And laying those back in a bit. Darkening up this really brown area. Some greys involved in that. I'm going to get a bit of that coral. Just go over the really pinky areas. Lightly. Just a light glaze, make them a little pinker. And pulling a little bit of that pink into the blue. Alright, what have I got in my hand? I've got all these pencils in my hand. It's 4. I think I'm going to go with Cold Grey 5. And start to darken up some areas. And I'm thinking about the structure all the time, the bony structure. So really keeping my eye on the reference and looking at how the skin is moving around, where the different ridges are, so that there's highlights and shadow valleys, all those sorts of structures, and just moving my pencil lightly along all those, building up definition. Moving my pencil in the direction. It's like I'm drawing over the top of